I'm going to start with some quick fire questions to warm you
you're
up.
gonna get me in trouble now.
No, they're fine. Well, this one's loaded, to be fair, because I know there's been a few. Best player you ever played with?
I get asked this all the time, Glenn. It's tough.
I know it is. I've seen the list.
Yeah, I know the list is. So I could go biggest names. Obviously, Esteban Cambiasso was exceptional. I had a spell with Teddy Sheringham at Colchester. Again, what a player. He was 41 at the time, but in small-sided games, he was incredible, really. Riyad Mahrez, Kante, Jamie Vardy, Adam Lallana, who is one of the best trainers you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Incredible. His intensity in training is off the scale, which I loved because I thought I was like that myself in terms of that intensity. But if I had to pick one, I'd have to say Riyad Mahrez.
Just for ability.
Just he was something different, and he was. Do you know what? It surprised everyone. He was so strong on the ball. I mean, he's thin, he's slight, but the way he moved the ball, his balance, and the way I train against him, and I got embarrassed a few times. I don't mind saying that, but yeah, incredible player, incredible.
Favourite cheat meal? Because we know you keep yourself well.
Biscuits. Not a meal, but biscuits.
Okay.
Don't really eat too many cheat meals. I'd say biscuits. I'm terrible with biscuits.
What,
Once
like
they're open, they're gone.
Pack?
Yeah. If I open them, they're gone.
You'll
And
never
they
pack?
will whisper from me from the cupboard. If they're in the cupboard, they're talking to me. So
it's one of them you just can't even bring them into the house.
Oh, it's one of those where if you have them in a tin and you're eating and then you put your hand in and you realise you've done them all and you're like, oh no.
Hardest opponent you ever faced?
Ozil. When we played at Arsenal. He was... I was lucky enough to play against some top players, but his touch and his awareness was the best. He was so hard to try and get the ball off. It almost like he knew exactly what he was doing a step ahead. So to try and get you to jump, to try and get you to press him, he'd play one touch. If he didn't, he would turn quick as well and glide across the ground. So Ozil was the best.
Funniest teammate at Brighton?
Funniest teammate at Brighton? Oh, wow. There's a few of those when I was coming through the youth team. You'd have to say, and I was probably part of the banter at times, so it was tough, but you'd have to say Charlie. Charlie was probably the funniest, yeah.
Do you prefer coaching or playing?
I think I'm going to be a better coach. I think.
You're a pretty good player.
I love playing. Look, I love playing. But I'm going to have to say coaching now because I can never play again. So I'm going to go coaching.
If you could relive one match, which one would it be?
What a question that is. I've had some really good ones that I loved and I enjoyed.
One springs to mind for me. I'll tell you what it is when you give me your answer.
One out of enjoyment. So can I do two? Can I do one out of enjoyment that I absolutely loved? Was when I was at Leicester and we beat Man United 5-3. Great day that was. But one I would love to relive would be the second leg in the semi-final for Brighton against Palace, because it's a huge regret of mine. It's just a huge regret that we didn't get promoted and we never got to Wembley with my hometown club. So,
well, this is quick fire.
Yeah.
But seeing as though you said that,
Yep.
We've got to go into it a little bit more.
Okay.
So what do you regret on that night? Because I remember that, and I think first leg, Selhurst Park, you had a header.
Yep.
And I think it's fair to say Brighton battered Palace on that evening. And coming back to the Amex, you were firm favourites.
Yeah, I think we were happy with the 0-0. We would have been happy with the 0-0 before the game at Selhurst Park. I should have scored with a header. I was way too safe of it, trying to just hit the target.
You did hit the target.
Yeah, I did hit the target, but I should have really committed to it. But yeah, we'd won 6, 7, 8 home games in a row before that, the second leg. we just didn't. It didn't happen for us on the night. It's quite a tight game. There weren't a lot in it. Zaha was brilliant for 15 minutes. Did he score 2? I think.
Yeah.
I think we had half a chance with Ashley Barnes just before that from a corner. We got cleared off the line potentially.
Hit the bar, didn't it?
Maybe it did, yeah. But there was loads going on in the game before the game. There was a little bit of unrest. A few things happened at half time. Different things happened. And it's just a huge regret that I didn't get the chance to play for my hometown club at Wembley. I got the chance to play at Wembley, which was amazing, but not with Brighton. And my youth team coach was Dean Wilkins, who played at Wembley for Brighton in a playoff final, and he used to talk about it a lot and mention it a lot, and it was something that I always wanted to do, and we were close to being able to do it. So yeah, it was a regret, definitely.
So Dean, when a club comes from bottom of League 2 to 6th position in the Premier League and into Europe, the fans of that club remember the players who did the heavy lifting. They did all the hard work to get the team up through the leagues and into the position they're in now. And they see you that way. They see you as one of those players who did that work for the club. When you walk into this incredible training ground now, do you still feel part of the Albion story? Do you feel like you played a significant role in that?
So I wouldn't say I was one of the ones that did the heavy lifting. I was part of the club during that process. Was I part of any of the promotions? Not really. I was around the squad as a youngster when we had the promotions from League 2 to the Championship, a relegation, a promotion again. I was around it. I played little bits here and there. I think I was part of helping the club survive. Definitely played a little part in that. In terms of when we had basically a youth team playing in the first team with Dean in League 1. Loved those days. Really enjoyed it. Learned so much as a player. But am I a huge part of the history? I'm not too sure. I don't think I'd be one of those names where you'd look back and go, okay, he played this significant role in getting us to where we are now. Obviously came back, played in the Championship, played at the stadium, which was always a dream, because I remember seeing it in a kind of model form at the Goldstone when I was 15, and hoping I would play in it one day, and I did that. But again, failed. Didn't get promotion from the Championship to the Premier League. But to walk into these facilities now is incredible, and the stadium's incredible. And my son's in the academy, so maybe he'll get a chance to do it. You never know.
Was it character forming to play in those teams?
Yes. Yes, it was.
Because you captained the Albion, Southampton and Colchester. You obviously had leadership qualities. And were those leadership qualities partly formed here in the struggle that the Albion were going through to get where they wanted to go?
Huge part, yeah. I think part of it is from where I'm from as well. I'm a Hastings boy. It's a fisherman's town. You have to know how to kind of look after yourself a little bit from where I'm from. Yeah, but the players we had in the dressing room as a youth team player, the coaches we had, so we had Martin Hinchelwood, Dean Wilkins, fantastic, so good with us. And then you had the squad of players that were around there that were proper men. You know, you talk about Charlie Oatway, Danny Cullop, Guy Butters, Richard Carpenter. I'm going to miss people out here, Bobby Zamora, all those types of characters that you kind of looked upon, and you had to be thick-skinned, really thick-skinned, and you had to have a real focus of what you wanted to do to become a professional footballer. And they definitely showed me some really good traits. Of playing in adversity, against challenges when times are tough, and they also showed me how to be successful as well. So I learned a lot.
I just want to pick up on what you said about you don't feel as though you played a massive part in the club, because the way I get a look at it, that group and those promotions are a huge part of the history, and they are part of the process. And that group you just mentioned there, as far as Brighton's concerned, it's a pretty iconic group.
Yeah, they're a massive part of it. I just think me individually, I didn't play a huge part in that. I was there, but I was a youngster coming through.
You were captain of the football club.
Yeah, but not with promotions and stuff. I was captain in the survival mode, just trying to keep the club afloat. Yeah, but that's part of it. You're right. It's definitely part of it. But I'm looking at it from a fan's point of view. And for the love of the club, will they look back on that and pick those type of players out? Look, I don't know. I'm just looking at it from my point of view. I think clubs and fans, and rightly so, look back on promotions and happy times, and they're the memories of the buses going through Brighton, the parades, the celebrations, and that should be remembered. The other stuff is important. I get what you're saying, but I don't think I was one of the heavy lifters, as you would say.
And you sorry, Paul, but you also mentioned that you failed when you came back to the club.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
That's a big, heavy word. That failed. You progressed the club. It was the closest they'd ever got to getting there.
Yeah, you're right. It was. But in my eyes, still failure. We should have gone up that year. Definitely. I think we drew 16 games that year. I think we missed out on automatic promotion by 6 points maybe. So I think with the squad we had, failure maybe is a harsh word, but it feels like that. And I was used to winning, Glenn. I'd had promotions before that at other clubs, and I had promotions after that. So I was used to winning, and I just expected us to go up, really. And that year I had back on loan at Brighton was one of the best years of my career. I loved it, absolutely loved it. With the players we had, I really enjoyed working under Gus. We won a lot of games, drew a lot, lost a few, playing at the stadium, played a great brand of football. There was ups and downs, there was challenges, we got into the playoffs. But ultimately, we didn't achieve what we as a group set out to do.
I think you'd be surprised because I hear what you're saying about the bus rides and the promotions and the marquee moments that everybody remembers, but they also remember sitting in the rain with Dean, for example, and seeing proper Albion players, scrap out a 1-0 win. They'll also remember you for your quality and your ability, which took you, higher in the game. So I don't know, Glenn and I would probably agree that, you're a much bigger part of the story than perhaps you would allow, but you've obviously got high standards and you feel that you didn't get promoted, therefore you didn't see the job through. I suppose we're probably here to reassure you that that's not, not how the fans see you.
No, well, the best thing I ever did was probably when the club sold me, because they used the money to buy Glenn. So that's probably the best thing that happened in my part in the club's history.
I'd forgotten you had that
fantastic,
connection.
but what a player that Glenn's been for the club, and the amount of goals he scored and the part he's played. So if I played a part in that because the club used the money to do that, then maybe that was my part in the journey.
Just going back to the captaincy thing, though, I mean, you weren't just a captain here, you were captain at Southampton and Colchester. So do you think you were a born captain, or did you learn what captaincy involved from being around those strong players at Brighton?
I don't know. I learnt a lot from others, yeah. I think the credit has to go to others, a lot to them, because I think I hear a lot of people, they talk about things, people use words, but I think you learn from watching others and the actions they take. And we had a lot of people around the club at that time. I'll keep mentioning his name because I am a lot, but I learnt a lot from Dean Wilkins, a lot, and Martin Hinchelwood. Their knowledge of football was fantastic, but their intensity and the way they led was brilliant, because they used to say to us in the youth team, their job was not for them to get us into the Brighton first team. Their job was to get them as high as we could in reach for the stars, try and get to the top. They were never aiming thinking we'll get you into the first team. So I think them leading by that example. But I think there is something within you as a personality, and I think that comes from experiences in life, not just football. And I've, like everyone, we've all had challenges in life and experiences, and I just tried to, I wouldn't say I was one with all these amazing speeches and incredible words, but I would say I led by example.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably my biggest trait.
Mm.
So obviously we've got to cover not only Brighton. You spent most of your career here, made the most appearances here, but you're very successful at other clubs, especially Southampton, Leicester.
Yeah, and again, lucky timing, good timing. Signed for the clubs at the right time. Signing for Southampton in League One on minus 10 points was a good decision.
That was a heavy squad.
It's a good squad, very, very good squad. But yeah, brilliant times. And to have the back-to-back promotions, I can probably say I did play a part in that to get them back to the Premier League. But yeah, like you say, Ricky Lambert, Adam Lallana, Morgan Snyden, Jose Fonte, Jason Punchant, David Connolly.
In League One.
In League One.
And they were all quite established as well.
I would say you could probably say Adam Lallana probably wasn't. He was a name or a name of a potential player. Morgan Snyden, very, very similar. Jose Fonte dropped down from the Championship from Palace.
Yeah.
Ricky Lambert was a player that everyone talked about, had been scoring goals for years, but could he cut it at the level above or above that? They paid £1 million for him, I think, in League One. But yeah, we had a really good squad, and that was enjoyable, really enjoyable.
But also, you were the team to beat in that league as well.
Yeah. That was hard, that, to start with. We were starting on minus 10 points as well, with Alan Pardew as manager as well, so he was a big name. And we missed out on the playoffs that year. Didn't quite get in the first year, but won the Paints Trophy, which kind of started the process. But it was really hard. Everyone came to St Mary's and wanted to beat us. I think the game you guys came and beat us 3-1. I think that might have been Gus's first game at St Mary's. I think Crofty scored you beat us 3-1. I think you might have scored the first one, or Coxey scored the first one.
I can remember Crofty scoring.
Yeah, Crofty scoring, and that's what it was like. Every game, everyone at St Mary's, we had to be at it, and we had to be so good just to win.
I mean, where did you want to play? Yeovil away or St Mary's? Do you know what I mean? That was the glamour time. Yeah. To be fair, at that stage, there was a number of big clubs. Off the top of my head, I can remember you and Leeds in that division at that time.
Huddersfield were there as well.
Huddersfield, yeah.
Peterborough obviously had some decent players.
But as far as like historically huge clubs, like going to Ellen Road and St Mary's is like,
I think Charlton were in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some big clubs. But we, obviously, everything gets publicised. We were spending a bit of money, we were investing in the team. So we expected, even that year we were on minus 10, we were still expected to get promoted. So it was challenging, but you could see what was being built. You could see the team, because when we beat teams, we beat teams.
Yeah. So when you're playing in League One in the best team in the league and with all those good players, if I'd asked you back then how
I'm not sure they were the best team in the league, Paul.
All right. most glamour players in the league then. If I'd asked you back then, how far can you go individually as a player, would you have said to me, I can go all the way to the Premier League, I'm capable of doing that? Did you know then?
No, I definitely didn't know. It was my aim. It was always my dream. Like, as a young kid, to try and get to the Premier League. I had no idea how that was going to happen, if it was going to happen. Did I think I was good enough? I didn't know, if I'm honest. I was a player that was never going to get bought by a Premier League club, but maybe I could work my way up to it. And that's what I mean about signing for the right clubs at the right time. Southampton was a perfect fit for me, and me signing for them, I was signing from Colchester, where we were top of the league in League One, and I was not dropping down, but I was signing for a club that had the potential to get to, no disrespect to Colchester, they're probably not going to get to the Premier League. So I had to be calculated a little bit by it. So did I believe? I don't know. It's tough to answer that, but I was going to give it everything I possibly could.
I felt very much like that. I felt as though I was never going to be signed by a Premier League club. I had to get promoted. But I tell you what did give me heart was watching lads who had been in the Premier League or loanees from the Premier League come down and play, and that I would think, maybe it's a possibility then.
Do you know what? I'm agree with you on that, because there would be some players that would come on loan from Premier League and you think, okay, they're good players, but they're nothing spectacular or nothing too different. But you will get a couple that will come on loan and you think, oh, okay, maybe they are quite good. Maybe they do have something a little bit different. So there was a real mix. But yeah, it did give me hope, because you're thinking, and when you play against, you have an FA Cup draw or something, you play against him. Now I know there's less realism to that, because we've all been in games where you play a lower team, you're not quite as your best, you maybe don't try as much, but you play against them and go, they're good, but I might be able to get to this level. So it gave you just hold on to that bit of hope.
So you had that hope again when you went to Leicester, I guess. So that's another step towards the Premier League, isn't it? And when you arrived at Leicester, did you think, right, this is the place that's going to get me there? I'm going to follow this team. I'm going to go with this team into the top division.
I had to, if I'm honest, because it's my last chance.
Yeah.
So I got back-to-back promotions at Southampton. We got to the Premier League, and then I wasn't needed. The club invested heavily again, and I wasn't needed, which was tough. But then I came on loan to Brighton and had a brilliant year. Failed, didn't get to the Premier League with Brighton, which I thought we would do. Went to Leicester in the Championship. I was still a Southampton player, but it was that moment. It's like a sliding door moment. So I had an option in my career. Do I take this? Because I had to drop quite a substantial amount of money to go to Leicester.
How old were you at this time?
30. 31, 30. So it was my last chance. And Leicester, again, signing for a club that got ambitions, had owners that were willing to invest in the club, had heavily invested in the club. But I was going there for a different reason now. So they had a big squad that they'd really invested in under Svenga and Eriksson.
Yeah.
And they needed to move players on. So they were bringing a different type of player in now to kind of try and find a balance, because there was so much talent within the group, but they didn't maybe have the know-how how to get promoted. And that was my role going there. Nigel Pearson was really honest with me. He's like, I need you to come in and be this certain type. I need you to lead in training. If you're playing well enough, you'll get in the team. But I need you to be an example to others and try and get us over the line. I'm going to go with a smaller squad. And thankfully it worked. I mean, we got 100 and something points and we were promoted, I think, with 10 games to go, champions with 6 games to go. And again, we had such a good squad. It was incredible. Really.
Yeah. You're on the training ground with, N'Golo Kante and people now, and as you said, Jamie Vardy. Can you just tell us about that title-winning year, the year that you became a Premier League winning footballer? How do you look back at that now?
Again, hard for me because I didn't play a huge part.
No.
Which is it's really tough for me, and it's, again, I don't know how deep do you want to go on this, but it's a huge regret of mine because I walked away from the challenge, if I'm honest. But yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw Kante, there's levels and there's levels, and but I mean, what a guy! I've never seen anyone smile as much. Quite quiet guy, quite timid off the pitch, really polite. Biggest smile in the world, but when he trained, honestly, he was so sharp. And when he came, he didn't get in the team to start with. They were putting, because he was so sharp, they were playing him on the left wing because he could play there. And it was only I think we played Aston Villa at home. We were losing 1-0, and he came on in midfield, and he completely changed the game. We won 2-1, and never looked back from that moment.
Yeah.
But the standard in training was a joke. But it was great because it was all short, sharp.
Yeah.
So it was I'm going on a bit here, but
no, it's
Nigel was all very much about intensity and sharp. And then Claudio Ranieri came in, and Claudio had his own ways of wanting to train, the Italian way, and he wanted us to be out on the pitch for long periods of time, to go into real detail, to get everything perfect. And I always say the biggest and the best decision he ever made was to go against his instincts, because the players and the coaching staff that stayed asked him, can we go this way? We believe in this way. And he didn't want to, but he did because we were winning games.
So where would you get that detail in? Would you get that detail in the in meetings and things?
Yes. So there'd be more. The meetings weren't too long, but the detail would come in the meetings. But we were winning. So the season before, when we stayed up, we were dead and buried. 8 out of 10 games, I think. So we'd found a way to win in the Premier League and win quite convincingly. And the players just wanted to continue that. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted long sessions, and it took a few conversations from the players and the coaching staff just to ask for, look, give us a chance to play like this, and it just flew.
But presumably you still feel proud to be part of that, because the Leicester winning the Premier League was arguably the greatest. Well, it is probably the greatest Premier League story of all time, isn't it? It just shouldn't have happened. They were 500-1, before at the start of the season. It was miraculous, and it was brilliantly done, wasn't it? It wasn't a fluke. It was really, the whole thing was romantic, impressive, and you were there for that. Do you still feel proud of that?
Yeah, of course I feel proud to be part of it and experience some of it, and then the build-up to get it to that point as well. I had a full season in the Championships, a promotion, a full season in the Premier League where we stayed up, and then partly there when we won the Premier League. So I was really proud to be part of that, but also to know the players that did it and have some experience with them, because the togetherness in the group was unbelievable. The ownership was fantastic. I've never seen anything like it. I think you've probably got something similar here now. But the ownership at Leicester was incredible. The way they treated the players, the way they involved the players, it became a real family, and they had a huge interest. And they were, we had the promotion, they took us out to Thailand, and they just showed us their culture, they showed us their life, they celebrated with us as well, they rewarded success. So it was amazing to be part of it, and I loved my time there. I really did. My family did as well. We ended up moving up there in the end because we enjoyed it so much. So yeah, proud to be part of it, but regrets because I wish I'd done more.
When you say you walked away from the challenge, I mean by leaving at the end of that season, is that you just?
No, so I think there's a mixed understanding of this, because obviously I was part of the squad and I was part of the team and the squad to start the season. I actually left, so I went on loan to Sheffield United.
Yeah.
So I wasn't actually there, when they won the Premier League. And everyone get asked me, like, oh, what's it like to be a Premier League winner? And at times I might ignore that and say, yeah, it's good. But the truth is, I wasn't actually there. So what I mean by not facing the challenge was they signed 2 midfield players. So we had 5. We had Andy King, Danny Drinkwater, Matty James, Gokingler, Kante, and myself. So there's 6 midfield players for 2 spots. So realistically, it was the first time in my career where I'd actually thought about it and went quite calculated about it, because I was 33 thinking, I might not play here. Where I'd never done that before in my career. I'd always gone, do you know what, I'm just going to give it everything, back myself, and I think I'll probably have a chance here. And I kind of walked away from that challenge, and it'd been the first time I did it. And if I'm honest, it affected me probably for another 6, 7, 8 years of my life. So it was a big decision, and I didn't face up to it. Now, look, it might have never been any different, might not have worked out, might not have played a single game, but I didn't stay to find out.
When you reel that list off of midfielders, and this is from my perspective, obviously, and your name's alongside them, that wouldn't necessarily scare me. That I would have in my mind that you would play probably the majority of games. So did you feel out of your depth?
Good question. Was I out of my depth?
You weren't out of your depth. Did you feel out of your depth?
No, and that's
so why
the regret.
walk away?
I was tired. I think I was a little bit tired. I was tired of constantly trying to prove myself. I was 32, 33. I definitely didn't feel out of my depth. I definitely didn't look at the players and think, I'm nowhere near this. I can't compete with these. I think my ego took over at certain points, thinking they're spending all this money on these midfield players. They're going to put them all this wages. I'm going to be bottom of the list. How am I going to get into this? Fear played a huge part. I'm 33. I'm coming to the end of my contract at the end of this season. If I don't play, what does that mean? I've never been in that situation before. There were so many unknowns for me that I'd not had in my career, and I didn't have someone I could go to and discuss it with. Or I wasn't willing to go to someone and go, look, I'm feeling like this. This is my situation. What would you do? What do you think? My pride and my ego took over and go, well, I'm fine. Of course, everyone needs to see that I'm fine. I've got this all worked out. I'm a 32-year-old man. I've got 2 kids. I'm a professional footballer. I'm playing in the Premier League. Of course, I should know what I'm doing. Didn't have a clue. Scared, fearful, but I didn't rise to that. That's what I mean by walking away. It was easier to go, well, I'll just go somewhere else, and then I can always go, well, what if? But also, if I'm really honest, I didn't see Leicester winning the Premier League. The year before, we just stayed up. So I was joining the club in League One in Sheffield United, where you think are going to go up. I think Leicester are probably going to go down. So I'm going to end up in the same position anyway, but I've just had a promotion. They've had a... Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you've got a little bit more security on a contract.
But I'm hugely overthinking it. I'm trying to predict the future, where there's absolute no sense in that, and it's absolute nonsense. And that's where I was at that time, just full of fear and of the unknown.
I always say your career is largely based on your decisions and your biggest decisions you make in your career. Obviously, you've got all those micro decisions that you make every weekend in an actual game of football, but then you have your pivotal decisions of which club you choose to join, because we have the choice to join a lot of clubs over the course of a career. You have a lot of interest, you have a lot of conversations, and you turn a lot down, and there's a couple every now and again that you really want to press the button on, that you really want. And up until that stage in your career, I think it's fair to say you probably made 3 right decisions.
Yep.
Colchester.
Yep.
Southampton.
Yep.
Right time.
Yep.
Leicester.
Yep.
Right time.
Yep.
So 3 out of 4, you made the right decision.
Yep.
Just that pivotal one.
What about coming back to Brighton on loan?
Yeah, as well.
You played 39 times that season, mostly with Liam Bridcut, I think. Is that right? And
with Liam.
That was a pretty decent partnership, wasn't it?
Liam, he was a great player. Yeah. What a player he was. He was perfect for Gus as well.
Oh, perfect.
The way he understood how Gus wanted him to play. He was excellent to play with. I was fortunate. We had, I'm going to forget some of the players now, but we had David Lopez as well. Yeah. Alandi, we had Vicente, we had Gary Dicker.
Buckley.
Yeah. Dixie was a good player, by the way. Gary Dicker. very good player, really underrated. And Gus used to lean on him a lot because I think Gary really understood how Gus wanted to play, and he would use Gary to maybe explain stuff or just put him in and out of the team just to show others. And I felt for Gary at times because he wasn't playing as much as he should, but Gus really lent on him.
He was intelligent footballer.
Yeah, such an intelligent footballer. And I think that's why he'd be a really good coach. We had Crofty as well. Crofty was in there, so we had a real strength in that midfield area. So it was easy to play, really, and that's why we were such a good team.
It was a very fluent, entertaining side, that, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had some good games, some really good games, and we had Craig McCall-Smith up front, Barnsley, Leo Ajoa came in, who I got lucky enough played with Leicester as well, and we had Matty Upson at the back, Wayne Bridge, Bruno, Caldy, Gigi, Gordon Greer. I'm going to forget players.
Was Donkey in then? No.
Donkey was in and out. So Donkey was at that stage. He was at that stage where he was a young kid, where we all saw what a player he was going to be, but didn't quite understand how to be a pro yet. Yeah. So he was in and out, and I think Gus was desperate to play him, but just couldn't. And I think that's why Matty Upson came in, because Adam Alab was there as well, who was playing and was in and out. But Matty Upson, what a player he was, and Bridgie. What a player. But Bridgie is a guy as well.
I'll still never get over that signing.
Yes, incredible signing.
See that Man City on loan to Brighton, and he was on a fortune at the time, wasn't he? He was like well known in the football world. It was just one of those. It was like, how have they managed that?
Did you play with him at Reading? Did you win on loan?
No, I missed him.
Great guy. So down to earth. But the fittest player I've ever seen that always looked tired. He always looked tired from the first minute to the last, but he could run. He wouldn't stop running, but he looked shattered all the time.
Talk about fitness. You were a fit player. I can remember running into Hamo a few times. It was like running into a brick wall.
That's the Hastings.
Yeah, I think that was one of my probably biggest traits. But that was a need. That was a must. I had to be fit. Every professional footballer are good footballers. Right, we're all good footballers, but some are better than others. So you need your personal trait that you're good. Yours, goal scoring, other traits as well, but you could score goals. Mine was that I need to get around the pitch. I need to get the ball back for others. So I had to be fit. Had to be.
What did you add to your game through all these experiences? What did you know at the end of your career that you perhaps didn't know at the beginning about, the actual game itself and your role in it?
I think one thing I've learned as a coach now, the importance of awareness. You have to be so aware. The best players are just, I've got pictures before they're receiving the ball. They're fully aware, their spatial awareness. They know where the pressure's coming from. If they're getting pressure, if they're getting, someone's coming to try and take the ball off them. Adam Lallana was the best at it, incredible at it. It was almost like he could stop the game and slow it down in his mind. So the best players have that. Is that natural? Is that trained? I think a lot of it's natural from a younger age, if you can get it into younger players at a real age, because it's a boring thing. You'll hear coaches say it all the time, scan. But if you can do it and you know where others are on the pitch, you're going to be one hell of a player.
But it just comes naturally. Adam was always like that, wasn't he? I can remember playing him in League One, and then it took me a little bit longer to get the Premier League. But he was one player that I thought, we played him at Selhurst Park one day, and I thought, wow, you have improved so much. He always wanted the ball. He dictated the play. He was just on another level.
Yeah, he was. And Cruyff off both feet as well. But he would, honestly, that for him, there's natural talent there, obviously. But he works so hard. Honestly, in train, you must have seen him train when he trained here, and the way he would lead others as well. And he was really hard with players as well. But then off the pitch, he'd explain why he was being hard with them. It was always with good intentions, but he demanded respect. He demanded standards. Hell of a player.
Talking about scanning, N'Golo Kante wouldn't go to where the next phase of play. He'd go to the one after that, wouldn't he?
Well, he could get there. He could get to free. It was easy. If he didn't need to, he could just do all the work.
And he would just intercept because he knew what was going to happen next, didn't he? Brilliant. What eyes he had.
Yeah, and he's achieved everything. He's won everything. He's won the World Cup. He's won the Premier League a couple of times. He won the Champions League.
Yeah.
Still going now. But yeah, what a player.
Yeah.
Dean, just talking about when you were at Leicester, and like you say, you were 32. From the outside, it looked like you had it all worked out, but you said you were struggling and things. How much has the awareness of mental health creeped into football?
It's a big subject, this, Glenn. I think it's improving. I think it's really improving. I think it's way off, if I'm totally honest. I think there's a lot written. I think there's a lot spoken. Is there enough care still? I'm not sure. And I'm not blaming anyone for that. I think it takes time. I think players are still caught in between, whether they will be willing to open up, whether they'll be willing to speak, what that would potentially mean for their career, whether they're willing to be totally honest with how they're feeling, understanding how they're feeling, where that comes from. But I think it's on the right tracks, and I think the PFA, the FA, clubs are doing more, but I'm still not sure where it's at. And for players that leave the game, my personal opinion, I think it's non-existent. Because if we're being really honest, you're not an asset anymore to anyone. You're not worth anything to anyone. So why? And I kind of understand it. Like, I'm not questioning it. It's just the truth of what happens. You're not worth anything to anyone anymore until you're needed again, potentially. So it's tough. But I think, again, players, there's a realisation of that. You know what world you're getting into. Like, that's what it is. It's all reported out there now. Everyone speaks about it. So if you're not willing to accept that and understand that, don't go into the world, in my opinion. But just be aware, if you do, it could affect you.
Yeah, I mean, I was always quite cold and callous about it, because I realised I was a commodity, and if I stopped scoring goals, then people weren't interested. Yeah. But I think it's really interesting for you to say, I think at the end of a career, you do get lost 100%. Like, you've never kept your own diary. Just stupid things that people think is normal for a footballer is like, it's mind-blowing stuff. And I think also of that period, probably like 13 to 17, where you're known as a footballer among your peers and things, and it's almost your identity. And if you lose your place in an academy, then that can be devastating for a kid. But to hear you say that of a 32-year-old footballer that is in the Premier League, that's really interesting, because everyone would think he's sweet. He's earning a lot of money. He's playing with a Premier League team. But it's just so interesting. And I agree. I think it is on the right path, but there is a lot more that needs to be done.
I guess, so, I mean, playing devil's advocate for a minute, people listening to this, if there's a bricklayer or a nurse or a teacher or an electrician listening to this, they might say, well, there was no aftercare for me either when I stopped being a nurse or a bricklayer or an electrician.
But you don't have to stop doing that for a long, long time.
That's true. You can have a whole working life of doing that,
and you get a pension at the end of it.
Yeah, but what I mean is, I guess it's possible to find help and support outside the game, isn't it? Almost of your own volition. But I suppose what we're really saying is the game is still not very good at looking after people that has served them very well, so it sends you off into the other world and says you're on your own, and that's where the issue is, isn't it?
It's lonely.
I think also when you don't know when it's going to end, that I think that everyone's finish has a big impact, and it's different. Like, I was really lucky. I played until a month shy of 38, and I called time on my own career without an injury. I was like, I'm done. And that was due to my own levels of hunger. I knew I was never going to get any better. I knew that real drive inside me, that will to win, had just diminished a couple of percent. And when it does that, you know it's time up. But then I know lads who finished through injury, and they never got to say goodbye. I was one of the lucky ones as far as I'm concerned, because that gives me some sort of mental stability that I said bye to the game rather than the game said bye to me. Yeah.
And you feel the same, Dean, or did you sort of fall off the edge of it a bit, did you feel?
I fell off the edge, so I fell right off the edge. Still trying to claw my way back up, to be honest. It's a really interesting subject. I think the biggest thing, and this is why I think it will take time, because it's really hard in any walk of life, which you mentioned. It's really hard to relate to someone who's not been in your situation. So what it needs is former players to be able to help players coming out of the game. And honestly, the biggest thing is just conversations. It's being able to speak to someone going, I feel like this. I don't know why I feel like this. I'm actually really scared. I just feel like a little kid, and I need my parents or someone to say it's going to be all right, and this is why it's going to be all right. But a lot of players are not willing to do that. You know, it took me a long time to reach out to someone to say, I'm really feeling like, and that came through someone who'd been in professional sport, so I could kind of relate to them a little bit. There was a sense of I could trust them because they could probably understand what I was feeling like, and I didn't feel stupid saying it. I didn't feel ungrateful saying it, because all the things you mentioned, there's other people suffering in the world, and I'm thinking here, I'm feeling just a little bit low here. Why do I feel like that? But it's your identity. You know, I had a moment when I came out of my career. Is that I was at Eastbourne Tennis, watching some tennis on the outside courts, and a little kid came up to me and said, can I have your autograph? You're Dean Hammond, aren't you? And I almost said, oh yeah, I used to be. So I didn't think I was Dean Hammond. Not that Dean Hammond's anyone, but as a footballer, I didn't think I was that anymore. So the identity was, that's who Dean Hammond is. So you're just really lost. Yeah. Really lost.
Yeah, it's a life in two halves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, it's an athlete's life. So, and it's cut right down the middle, and then someone says to you, right, you've got to find a new life, a completely different life, a new purpose. I mean, anyone can see why that's hard.
And I think it's also difficult. You say about people being willing to open up. It's well documented in football. A lot of people put masks on every day before they walk in the dressing room, because it's a masculine place. Even though you've got teammates fighting every day to get above you, to play in the team, to get past you. So even though you're competing against other teams and that is your ultimate goal, you've got that mini goal of competing against your own teammates. So every day you put a strong facade on.
Yeah.
But it has to be that way. So in my opinion, the game doesn't have to change. There just has to be a greater understanding. So if I'm speaking to my son, who potentially could go into sport, or anyone's kid, right, you're going to go in, you give them the rules, the realism of this is what it's going to be like. You may have a career like this, you may earn this money, you may not, you may fall off. But at some point within that process, you're going to fall off a cliff and you're going to really struggle. That is what's going to happen. But when it does, we've got this in place, this, and this. So you go in going, okay, that might happen, so I'm aware of that, but also I have to be single-minded. I have to be driven. I have to be willing to fight. I have to be a winner. I have to be really intense. I have to be happy to be unpopular within a group to get what I want in my career. That will never change, I don't think.
Yeah, and I often think that understanding that this isn't forever would actually help you appreciate it more, wouldn't it? Because if you really get it into your head that I might have 10 years of this wonderful life, this privileged life, this life that I can't wait to live every day, but then it's going to end, then each day might mean even more to you as a professional footballer. But unless you tell people that, they think they're invincible, don't they?
You try telling that to a 23-year-old.
I'll give it a go if you like.
50 grand a week in the Premier League, they're invincible. And
that's a different conversation.
I think like as former pros, the go-to comment is enjoy it doesn't last long, and we have heard it so many times over the years, so many
Every
times,
generation.
and it's just like water off a duck's back until you actually retire, and then you start saying the exact same words.
Yeah, but if you're told that 50 times and then you get to the end of your career and say, what the hell happened there? At least you could say, well, at least I was warned,
Yeah, you're warned, but whether you take on board the advice, that's a completely different. You're busy, you're doing your thing, you're striving towards something, you're working towards something, and it's hard to tell somebody.
The hardest thing is when you achieve what you're striving for. So what do you do then? And you've still got time to play. Yeah, that's tough.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's an incredibly important message there, Dean, that you've just laid out. That don't let people disappear into this new life without and let their confidence collapse and let their sense of purpose disappear without having conversations, without listening. It's important to listen, isn't it? And I guess if you could have said all that when you did stop, it might have been less of a struggle if people had listened to you and there was a wider understanding of that process, how brutal that is. Then people aren't going to go through 4 and 5 years of feeling terrible, are they? So have the conversation. Is that really the essence of what you're saying?
I think it's the willingness for me to open up, I think, as well. I think probably if you're really truthful, there's lots of people that would be willing to listen. But it's whether I go to them. You talk about, I think that's where your pride or your ego gets in the way. Because at 32, it's a young age in the real world. As a footballer, you feel very old and very experienced, and you've got like almost like a wisdom. You know nothing about life though. So I had opportunities when I was at Leicester. I remember sitting down in the canteen and I was having a cup of tea with Mark Schwarzer, such an experienced guy, and I had these feelings within me. So sliding door moment. What if I just said, "Look, Mark, do you fancy another cup of tea? But I'm feeling like this, or I've got this on my mind, or what would you do, or what have you done?" You know, he was 42 at the time, so 10 years older than me. He could have sat there for 5-10 minutes, and he could have just not told me what to do, but just could have been really relatable. Well, actually, Dean, when I was in this situation, when I was at Middlesbrough and this, and actually then I was thinking, oh, maybe I'd go back to Australia, or then I married someone in London. All you do is tell your own story, but it might be relatable. Then I might pick something up and go, well, actually, that relates to me. Maybe I could do that. Well, I've never thought of it like that. But it was me stopping me. That's the problem.
But even if it wasn't to give you answers, just to get it off your chest.
You like anything. If you hear yourself, the voices in your head, or the internal conversation, without sounding crazy, the voices in your head, the internal conversation that we all have with ourselves, when you say it out loud, it sounds very different. And it sounds a little bit clearer as well when you actually speak it.
Yeah. And usually it's a relief, isn't it? Not to repress it.
Yeah.
I mean, I always think there's a phrase, it's good to talk. It's also good to listen. Without listeners, there are no talkers. So you have to have a receptive audience, don't you, when you want to open up about these things.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. Thanks for coming in and talking to us about it,
my
and your
pleasure.
great career as well. And as we started by telling you that you're a very important player in the history of this club, and the fans love you. So I hope you'll take that away with you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.